independence.
Hello, my name is Jaden, and this is my brother's story. He was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy when he was just 1 year old. But I don't know what that means. The doctors told my parents that he would have difficulty moving, eating, and breathing. He told my parents he would not live past 2 years old. But my parents never stopped fighting for him. My parents loved us, cared for us, and watched over us. Brandon made many friends, and I made many happy memories. Every week, one baby is born with SMA in Malaysia. We Care Journey supports families affected with SMA. Today, there are 2 drug therapies that can stop this disease. To families affected, these treatments are a second chance. I know it is hard for my family, but knowing that they are not alone means that there's hope. And while there is hope, we will keep supporting one another.
I got a second chance to have a happy life.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all. Welcome to this morning's launch event for the report Living with Spinal Muscular Atrophy in Malaysia, organized by Persatuan We Care Journey. My name is Azrul Mabkalib from the Galen Center for Health and Social Policy. Please find the agenda for this morning sent to you via the link provided in the chat box below. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a busy month for those in the spinal muscular atrophy community. August is, as you know, SMA Awareness Month. For those who have been following We Care Journey's series of webinars for the past 2 weeks, let me say that it has been a tremendous honor to have your interest, support, and commitment, not only from many of the states here in Malaysia, but also from Singapore and as far away as Hong Kong and Bhutan. Thank you for being with us here on this journey. These series of webinars on SMA and today's launch for this important report has been made possible with the support of Biogen, Novartis, and Roche. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, around 4,000 Malaysians are estimated to be living with SMA, and as many as 700,000 are thought to be carriers of the gene which causes this genetic disorder. A child is estimated to be born every week with spinal muscular atrophy. The dedication, commitment of parents, caregivers, and the courage and strength of children and adults with SMA, many of whose stories are represented here this morning, which you will hear and see and captured in this report, continue to inspire and recharge us with hope and optimism for the future. Today, with the possibility of new treatment available for SMA on the horizon, children, teens, and adults with SMA are living healthy, productive, and fulfilling lives. However, the road is long, and while the journey for many families with SMA in Malaysia continues to be supported by the combined voices and efforts of organizations and advocates such as We Care Journey, there is still much work ahead, especially amidst demands of the COVID-19 crisis, which appear to have swamped everything else in its path. It is easy to forget that there are other medical conditions which exist and need to be urgently addressed. SMA is one such condition. There is much to learn from this crisis to address gaps, fulfill needs, and mobilize resources. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin today's session, we would like to have one of those voices to speak to you today, and that is from the co-founder and president of Persatuan We Care Journey, who is comprising of not just Edmund Lim, but he, Yap Suk Yi, and their 10-year-old son, Brandon, who have been fierce and passionate advocates on the issue of SMA. Their lived experiences caring and supporting Brandon are similar to many families who are here this morning. They, along with many others, provide inspiration and motivation for other families with SMA, helping light the way forward. Let's hear from him. Edmund, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Azrul. Hi. Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see everyone here today. I will go through and try to chat with all of you afterwards. But as we all know, these sort of digital platforms, it's hard for me to see who's here today. But based on people who've registered, I'm so encouraged to see people from the health authorities, doctors, professionals, our industry partners, and many from the public, especially our donors and supporters, making time this morning to be part of this launch. This idea to survey the voices of the SMA community started, I think, back in 2017, or it did start in 2017. Now it seems like it's taken so long right now. It's 4 years after the fact, but there were some, starts and stops along the way. But it was catalyzed because of the experience that I had with my wife when my son was first diagnosed 10 years ago, almost to the day. It's almost to the day. Back in those days, it was really hard to sort of find someone to talk to and find out what to do. And it stays with me. This incredible loneliness and isolation and uncertainty and fear of what's going to happen. It is over time, though, as we got to know more families, we started to connect with more families and started to understand their journeys as well, that we could see that everyone's journey wasn't exactly the same because of the different type of SMA, because of our own family backgrounds, where we live, etc. But as we understand each other's journeys, we start to see some of the commonalities in the obstacles that we face and the challenges that we're up against. It is from these commonalities that we start to find some strength to know that people have gotten through the difficult times and how they've managed to get through the difficult times and to learn from it. So that being the catalyst, it was something that I wanted to really do, to let people have their voices heard. Not everyone's comfortable speaking out. Not everyone's able to or has the opportunity to as well, but everyone's got an incredible story to tell and for each of us to learn from. And that's really how this study started. Eventually, we found the right team, and we've got Biogen as a sponsor to help to provide us a grant to actually get it done. And as I now look at what we've done with this report and I reflect back, I start to see that it's not just about giving people a chance to have their voices heard, but what value that really has for everyone. And here's what I think, from a community point of view, as one of the families in that community, it helps me really feel that I'm not alone. It helps me understand the people who have come before us, who are also with new kids as well, to understand what's that shared experience that we have. And in that shared experience, of course, nothing's perfect, but to also understand that as we're trying to tackle those challenges that we have, that with other people being part of the journey, understanding that other people are part of that journey, but in a slightly different way, but still facing a similar challenge, that we feel that our voices are amplified, that we're not alone. And I think that's a value to the community that we can start off with as well, And when we bring together these shared experiences of the community, I think also of the healthcare providers, right? And the healthcare providers being the doctors, being the professors, being the hospitals, being the medical device manufacturers, our pharmaceutical manufacturers as well, all, therapists, everybody within the medical and healthcare sector. You can start to also understand what the real impact is of the work that you do, that you bring. Because most times as healthcare providers, you see us in the clinics or in a healthcare setting. That's a very short span of time in our lives. And you don't get to spend more time, or it's hard to spend more time to understand the good that you do within that space, how it translates across other and many other areas of our lives. It's not just healthcare. taking care of healthcare has many, many other benefits and many other impacts to our lives, not just to the patient, to the caregivers, to our siblings, to our extended family as well. And hopefully, when you understand that impact, it's where you can understand the value that you bring in what you do. And when I think about beyond the healthcare providers, and I think about the government and the policymakers and the community at large as well, which is the public, when you understand how when you understand that it's not just a health issue, but how a health issue affects families and communities, and how those communities are part of the bigger society as well at large, they can then truly understand the value of a report like this and what it means for every one of us. And I think what it means is two things, right? The one thing is accept that we don't do anything else. And from there, we really understand what that tremendous burden is, not just on the families affected, but overall also on the society, because that burden spills over in terms of the needs of the community as well. And on the other hand, is what we can do better. And I'm really encouraged because whilst we're launching this report today, we've also had the opportunity to have engagements, something like this, to bring stakeholders together to understand the impact of living with SMA, and to also experience how things have managed to take off since, for example, 2019, the end of 2019, where we brought some of you together to understand the impact of living with SMA and to understand what roles that we could play, and to then see as well how much can change and how much, when people put in their part and work together, how much we can really transform the living experience of families with SMA, and how it can also benefit the community at large and the society at large as well. I don't want to take up more time because Dr. Cheng's really going to go into this report. And after that, we've got an incredible panel of people to discuss, what this means as well and what possibilities there are. I do want to thank everyone who's involved in pulling this report together. Firstly, the research team who are here today, I hope everyone's here today. But behind the research team are other people as well, playing supportive roles to make sure that this happens. Of course, it's Biogen who write the grant to ensure that we can get things done. I would like, hopefully, to be able to say hi to everyone. So, please use the chat in Zoom to say hi, to say you're here. It's hard to sort of see everybody. But everyone being here today gives me so much encouragement, so much encouragement to know that people do care and people understand that the small roles that we can all play together can really move forward what, to be honest, felt like a very hopeless condition for me and the family 10 years ago to what has become a very hopeful condition and a life of possibility and real opportunities as well. And to think about how we can all work together around improving the equity, the affordability, and the sustainability as well of much better healthcare practices, and not just healthcare practices as well, right? Getting to school, getting work, building a life, independent living, all these other things that really make, what life is important to all of us. I look forward to meeting all of you, today. I look forward to connecting with all of you after this as well. I'm not going to take any more time because, there's really so much, great talks which are coming up. Thank you again for being here today. I'll pass it back to Azrul. Thanks, Azrul.
Thank you, Edmund. Thank you so much for providing us with many of your words of encouragement and definitely some points that we need to think about. And certainly I think about what you said just now about what we can do better, what actions can we take, what are the low-hanging fruit that's in front of us right now that we can actually take advantage of. But most importantly, is how can we work together to make that change that we want to see in the SMA community. So we now come to the part that we've all been waiting for, and definitely the report being launched today, Living with Spinal Muscular Atrophy in Malaysia, is a seminal report which contains the findings, the first research in Malaysia into the lived realities of the SMA patients, their families, and caregivers. The findings recommendations from this study should be implemented to improve the quality of life for the SMA community. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know you've all been waiting for it. Let's launch the report.
Đại家好，我嘅名叫做梁耀文，我係一名肌肉萎縮症病患者，英文名叫做 SMA Spinal Muscular Atrophy。
Assalamualaikum, nama saya Juwairah binti Marija, berusia 32 tahun. Suami saya Muhammad Firdaus bin Muhammad Ghani, berusia 36 tahun. Kami dikurniakan 3 orang cahaya mata, seorang lelaki dan 2 orang perempuan. 2 daripadanya diagnos SMA type 1.
我呢個病全身唔喐得，我由 BB 5個月至1歲被診斷出有呢個病，我從來未試過行過路。
Arwah Ifan diagnos masa umur 5 bulan dan dia meninggal masa umur 9 bulan. Yang bongsu Noadra Sofia diagnos masa 21 minggu dalam kandungan. Alhamdulillah sekarang berusia 2 tahun.
我嘅興趣係玩中國象棋，我中意玩中國象棋。雖然我嘅手唔喐得，我冇辦法自己撳個棋，但係我可以叫我嘅屋企人。我有一個好愛我嘅母親，佢係一個好偉大嘅母親。喺我5歲嘅時候，我父親就去世。我嘅母親承擔呢個屋企嘅大小事務。我屋企有3個兄弟姊妹，我母親一個人承擔呢個屋企真係好唔容易。
Cabaran kami menjaga anak SME inilah cara penjagaan anak SME ini. Alhamdulillah sekarang sikit sebanyak info dan maklumat tu ada. Selain itu cabaran dari segi kewangan kerana kebanyakan peralatan yang ada perlukan tu kos yang agak tinggi.
另外，我聽講有一種藥可以幫助 SMA 病患者，我希望將來有更多小朋友可以得到呢種藥嘅幫助，能夠得到更好嘅人生。
Harapan kami semoga anak-anak SME kat Malaysia ni diberi peluang rawatan sama macam anak-anak yang di luar negara.
This report shows us what we can do to improve the health, education, employment, and inclusivity for patients and families with SMA. We all have a role to play. How can we do better today?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Those inspiring stories of courage, strength, and unwavering commitment tell us, through example and lived experiences, the power of combining the love and dedication of parents, siblings, families, and caregivers with effective treatments and continuous physiotherapy. Those stories launches this report. It's very clear that love finds a way to make the impossible possible. Just a reminder that the report is downloadable at smacare.org. Smacare.org is a website which delivers relevant information to enable families with SMA to achieve better health in their lives. Through trusted, comprehensive medical content, insights from experts, and real families and useful toolkits, the website aims to help answer what is SMA, the impact on families, how to prevent, diagnose, and treat SMA effectively and early, and why it matters to solve unmet needs and provide optimal care and support. Please go on to the website smacare.org after today's session. I would like to thank everyone who has been instrumental in making this report possible, and for us to be able to hear in a short while about the findings from this report. To talk us a bit more about the findings of the document that was launched a moment ago, I would like to invite Dr. Chung Gak Siu. She is the head at the Genetic Department in Kuala Lumpur Hospital, which serves as the National Referral Center for Inherited Metabolic Disorders and Genetic Disorders in Malaysia. She completed a clinical genetics fellowship program and trained at the Institute of Human Genetics, International Center for Life in the UK. Dr. Chung is a committee member of the National Task Force for Pediatric Palliative Care, and she has a keen interest in mindfulness-based therapies and their clinical application in supporting caregivers and patients with life-limiting genetic disorders. Over to you, Dr. Chung. I hand it over.
Thank you, Astro. So, thank you everyone for coming on board today. We are celebrating August, the SMA Awareness Month, and the launching of the report today. I'm very delighted to share this report that has taken us almost more than 2 years to complete, and I hope you will stay tuned till the end of this program. So let's just share my screen. So this report, you can download it to have a better idea of what I'll be presenting, because it's just a very short time for me to share the gist of the report. As a start, I'd just like to introduce SMA. It's caused by deletion in the survival motor neuron 1 gene and is inherited as an autosomal recessive manner in which both parents are carriers of the gene mutation. SMA is characterized by loss of the anterior horn motor neurons in the spinal cord, resulting in progressive denervation of the muscles, leading to muscle atrophy and weakness. It is a rare and life-limiting genetic disorder and a leading cause of death in children less than 2 years. The incidence is estimated worldwide and in our own study of 1 in 10 to 20,000 live births, and Malaysia having 500,000 live births a year, is estimated that we have around 25-50 babies born annually, and the carrier frequency of 1 in 50. The disease has no cure, but there are existing FDA-approved disease-modifying therapies. So without a cure, the impacts of having this disease are manifold, which I will go into now. The goals of the United Nations NGO Committee for Rare Disease are fully aligned with many of the 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals and support the United Nations vision to create a world where every single human can lead a dignified life. In 2019, member countries, including Malaysia, adopted the United Nations Political Declaration on Universal Health Coverage, which includes rare diseases. It commits all governments to strengthen efforts to address rare diseases in their plan to achieve universal health coverage by 2030. Universal health coverage ensures all people everywhere can access quality health services with financial protection.
Dr. Chung,
Yes?
if perhaps you could put on your microphone, there's some interference that we're hearing, if you don't mind.
All right.
Thank you. Apologies for the interruption.
Can you hear me better without the interruption now?
It is clear. Thank you, Dr. Chung.
All right, so I'll continue. So working towards the SDG goals and the universal health coverage, what we have done so far is in 2018, where that's our first small step of trying to understand the epidemiological data of burden of disease of SMA in Malaysia. And subsequently, we went on to do this impact study, which we are launching today, the findings. And hopefully, with this real world evidence, we will create more awareness and to hopefully shape policies and practices. And then there's more work to be done to think about the immediate next steps and what would be our next milestone. From the report review, I would tell you why we first embarked on this study, because there was very lacking in knowledge amongst public and healthcare providers about the health challenges and psychosocial economic issues faced by persons living with SMA and their caregivers. And with the evolving SMA treatment landscape, our community, our SMA community in Malaysia loses out as there was no opportunity for them to access clinical trials and to receive novel therapies. What this study hoped to achieve, we have highlighted challenges and can understand the impact of this debilitating condition on the SMA community. With this, we can identify potential areas of improvement and how we can further manage patient expectations and performance of the healthcare services. Hopefully, with these findings, we can inform service provision and healthcare resources allocation for the management of SMA in Malaysia. And this study also supports the SMA advocacy efforts. How did we do this study? We obtained patient feedback and patient care experience through a mixed method, which consisted of two parts. The first part is the quantitative study, which was based on a questionnaire. And the second part was a qualitative study, which we utilized in-depth interviews and focus group discussion based on interview guide. So the SMA quantitative study was adapted from Cure SMA Voice of the Patient report in 2018 in America, and which consisted of 4 domains looking into the demographic patterns, the impact in daily lives, symptoms that matter most in the lives of the persons living with SMA and their caregivers, and subsequently management and treatment options. We had a total of 42 respondents to this quantitative study. As you can see here, we have 13 persons living with SMA, and 6 of them have SMA type 2 and 7 with type 3. The SMA caregivers were mainly, in fact, majority are all parents, except for one, which is actually a non-Malaysian paid care assistant to a type 3 SMA patient. What did we find? We found that the mental health burden is exceedingly very high. The top 3 responses in coping with SMA are stress, anxiety, and depression. Almost 3/4 of caregivers experience anxiety, and half of the patients and caregivers feeling stress with coping with SMA. 14% of caregivers gave up their jobs or lost their job because they have to take care of a family member. And in a small number actually experience social isolation and troubled relationships. What are the activities that are most limited by SMA, which we all take for granted? Independence in mobility, the inability to move around the house, go to school, or even work independently. Transferring from a wheelchair or a scooter to the bed or the toilet takes immense effort. Engaging in physical activities is something that they are not able to do. Example, playing sports. What more for something so basic as lifting a fork and spoon to feed oneself or dress oneself. And the fourth topmost activities that are limited is attending to personal hygiene independently and going to the restroom or toilet by oneself. The other activities that are mentioned are turning in bed, engaging in social activities, and building relationships such as dining out or even dating. So the significant symptoms that affects the daily living and quality of life correlates with what I have mentioned earlier. Muscle weakness and contractures cause a lot of struggles with activities of daily living, such as eating, bathing, and dressing oneself. Ineffective cough due to weak respiratory muscles. The patients would face a lot of difficulties with coughing out phlegm, and they practically drown in their own secretion. I would now share with you the qualitative study of this report. The SMA qualitative study was adapted from Cien et al. In 2015, which talk about the understanding the experience and needs of individuals with SMA and their parents. And it also consisted of 4 domains, which are listed here. And I would go in each of the findings for each domain. Before that, I would like to just share the characteristics of the participants in this qualitative study. So not all of the participants in the quantitative actually went on to enroll in this, and we need to get their consent, because this qualitative study was in a more, it takes at least 1 to 2 hours per session to interview them. So 7 persons living with SMA were interviewed either as in the in-depth interviews or in a focus group discussion. 5 of them has SMA type 2 and 2 with type 3. And out of the 23 caregivers who consented to proceed to be interviewed, 4 of the families have had previously affected child, and 5 of them have had lost their child previously. And the mothers and the fathers were interviewed either as in-depth interviews or focus discussion in both mothers group and fathers group, and also as a mixed fathers and mothers. The key findings will translate to the recommendations that I will share later. The impact of this chronic debilitating condition to the SMA community are manifold, and they encompass the biosocial, biopsychosocial, spiritual domain. And it's also very important that the recommendations will look into making sure that all these domains are taken care of. Relating to the diagnosis of SMA, many actually shared about the long journey for getting the diagnosis, going through numerous visits to the pediatrician and specialists, and some even getting a misdiagnosis. Also in delayed in referral to the specific specialty. Lacking of awareness and knowledge amongst the healthcare professionals is one main important reason, and also lacking of supportive services in providing the early intervention program. Many caregivers express the attitude of healthcare professionals in overlooking parental concern with the developmental delay in the child. Many also felt that their doctors communicated the diagnosis in an insensitive and unhelpful manner, not providing adequate information. In fact, some of the caregivers had to Google and look up the information themselves, and also not providing support and skills to better care for their child. So they are basically very lost. As for the impact on the life, I would be telling you separately as from the perspective of the persons living with SMA and the caregivers. And the impact of life would be related to also their worries and concern. So for persons living with SMA, they have lots of self-doubt, lack of motivation and frustration as a consequence of abuse, and also always being compared to a normal sibling. They also face challenges due to deteriorating functional abilities. And that would actually cause them to have fear of losing independence, which makes them to be very dependent and reliant on personal care assistant, either paid or their own parents. With this loss of control and helplessness, there's always this anticipatory anxiety and stress. And no wonder, depression, stress, and anxiety are the three topmost response. So they also encounter non-inclusiveness in school and workplace, and the lack of disabled-friendly public facilities. What about the caregivers? Caregivers would struggle with their changing lifestyles or having to give up, their hobbies to look after a child with SMA. Families, relationships may be strained between couples looking after a child, or even among their own close family when there are invitations to, say, a kanduri or a wedding function are not being able to meet. Unsupportive schooling environment is another factor where parents have trouble getting their children in school because of this misconception that they need to be in a class with learning disabilities, which we know that SMA does not affect the cognitive function. Discrimination and bullying also happens. And a very important factor is on financial burden. There are lots of expenses incurred with providing care for a patient with SMA, such as the modification of the home to accommodate wheelchairs, for example, and also the equipments, which are very costly, such as the ventilators, BiPAP machines, or cough assist machine, or suction machine. And of course, the therapies that are very essential to keep them working. So caregivers face a lot of uncertainty, as mentioned by Edmund earlier, for the children's future, They always would have that in their mind, who will take care of them, you know, when they passed on. And this anticipatory fear of premature death and dying. Some mothers or fathers, they have experienced a previously traumatic passing of an infected child, and the need to make very difficult treatment choices and advanced care plans. We have also very lack of awareness in school and in the public. For example, the very obvious inconsiderations regarding lifts and parking space for OKU, and the community acceptance for persons with disabilities because of this social stigma. So what the community wants, hopefully they can have a post-diagnosis holistic care, which will encompass, you know, a whole of a lifetime service for them, including palliative care and respite care. And of course, they hope to actually have access to treatment and clinical trials for novel therapies. Many praise the effort of a We Care Journey and patient support group in helping them able to care for their child better through mutual sharing of information and experiences and providing emotional support to each other. Mental health counseling was one of the needs that was brought up. The patients and caregivers, they want to learn coping skills to help cope better and to prevent burnout. Inclusion in education, as well as non-discrimination at work, and providing public awareness would hopefully change the perception towards persons with disabilities. There was also a call to the government to improve disability services accessed, example in the public amenities and transport facilities for persons with disabilities, and hopefully that would provided a clear and committed policy direction to govern regulations and incentives, and hopefully also genetic non-discrimination. Moving forward, we have four very important points for recommendations. That is strengthening the clinical management of SMA, and that would also include most rare disease, which is implementation of a systematic and coordinated approach and whole of a lifetime service in incorporating all the different specialties in a multidisciplinary team. So treatments are not cure, but it's very important to implement at least the minimal standards of care. With the high mental health burden, emotional support is highly required and needed for every stage of the disease, from the initial shock and acceptance of getting a diagnosis of SMA and being told the prognosis, the anxiety and stress from caregivers for having cared the children, especially when they have, you know, intercurrent illness for pneumonia. These are times of crisis and extreme stress, and to prevent risk of burnout, as also the grief and bereavement when a child passes away. The third one is very important in empowering patient-parent advocacy organization. In the community, in the education reform and employment opportunities, we hope to change perception towards persons living with disabilities. The needs of patients dictate priority of care. Hence, it's very essential for patient and family to articulate their needs with regards to accessibility laws, school or teacher aid, and in even hiring of personal care assistant, and of course, workplace discrimination. There is a need to have an allocated budget, or perhaps coming up with innovative and sustainable funding for orphan drugs, and outlawing genetic discrimination for insurance companies. Looking ahead from 2018 and now, and hopefully in the next couple of years, there would have a SMA registry, which would hopefully be able to provide us with more accurate prevalence data. And we are hopeful for perhaps the next milestone, there will be access to treatment for our SMA patients. This is just a schematic thing that I've come up with. The very important to recognize that the patient and the family is centered to all this, and having a diagnosis and the subsequent management and education is very important. In a larger picture, we need regional and global networking, which SMA We Care Journey has done very well to hopefully be able to have more capacity building and also influence policy. So perhaps it's time now to have a pause and reflect. You know, the heart is like a garden, and it can actually grow compassion or fear, resentment or love. What seeds will you plant there? Only through education, dedication, and cooperation amongst all stakeholders are we able to bring about these feelings of altruism and compassion in society at large. We remain hopeful that we can build and celebrate an inclusive culture where diversity is embraced and persons with differential ability are respected and valued. And lastly, we would like to thank all persons living with SMA and the beautiful angels, and of course, the research team here and We Care Journey for providing also the support and logistics, and Biogen for the grant. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. What a beautiful way to end your presentation and to emphasize on the role of compassion and the emphasis on respect and dignity. I certainly will be remembering that from this presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Chung. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure some of you have burning questions regarding the presentation. Please do not hesitate to ask them during our upcoming session, as we have Dr. Fahisham, who was part of the team that put together this study. Please enter your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And please do not use the chat to do that. Put in your questions in the QA box at the bottom of your screen. So, ladies and gentlemen, because we have quite a few remarkable panelists with us this morning, as you can see from the slide there, I would like to just complete our introductions of them so that we can go straight into the discussion with our panelists, 5 panelists today. First of all, we have Aisha Ruz, or better known as Shah Ruz, is the co-founder of Aubergine Design Collective and a person living with SMA type 3. She started her own design company because the current workplaces in Malaysia weren't person with disability friendly, which led to her championing inclusive spaces that accommodate all people. Her body of work succinctly portrays the potential that SMA patients are able to achieve when given the opportunity to actively participate in society. And I also hear that she does scuba diving. We have our next speaker, Dr. Puan Syaratul Azma, or Katsha, as she's well known. She is the mother of an adult daughter of SMA and another daughter who passed away from the same condition at 15 years old. She is also a self-made entrepreneur who strongly advocates for the SMA community, who has also appeared on BFM radio and local news outlets to bring awareness to professionals and public alike. Next is Dr. Hu Tek Peng, who specializes in general pediatrics and pediatric neurology and is based at the Pediatric Institute in Hospital Kuala Lumpur. He qualified with his MBBS from University of Malaya in 1987 and in 1996 with his Master of Medicine in Pediatrics from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Dr. Hu was part of the Committee in Child Neurology and Pediatric Development Pediatrics in the 2019-2021 term at the Malaysian Society of Neurosciences. We have with us all the way from Kota Baru, Kelantan, from the East Coast, is Dr. Fahisham Taib, who is currently a pediatrician and senior lecturer at the University Science Malaysia. He is qualified from University College Dublin in 1999 and completed his PEDS training with the Royal College of PEDS and Child Health UK. He is currently based in the East Coast. And lastly, we have Dr. Tan Hui Siu, who is a full-time clinician for the past 17 years with administrative and policy-making experience. She graduated from University of Malaya in 2004 and obtained her professional degree in 2010. She holds a Master of Bioethics from Harvard University, and she is currently concentrating her efforts in establishing clinical ethics support in public hospitals. And she is the co-founder of the Malaysian Bioethics Committee, and she recently led the editorial work for bioethics and COVID-19 guidance for clinicians. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our session. Let me just put you on, and please switch on your video and we'll have you straight into the session. And just to have all of you here, I think we're still missing Dr. Hu. If we could just have Dr. Hu there.
I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it.
Let me just activate. Hold on. Go ahead, Dr. Hu. So we have Katsha with us. Just waiting on Sharuz. Are you there?
Yep, here.
Okay, hold on. Let me just put you on. Okay, so welcome. It's a full panel that we have here this morning. So I just want to make sure that we have everybody here before we start, and then we'll flip to you when your time comes for the different questions. But please leave your video on, and we'll get to you. So let's go to it then. There's been a lot of discussions. There's a lot of information that has been shared here with us this morning. We just heard the presentation by the different speakers. And I would like to just ask the first question to Aisha. Can I call you Sharuz?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'll respond to most things. Okay, you works too.
Okay. Well, let me ask you then, Sharuz. I heard just now in Dr. Chung's presentation just now, something that rings quite true, and that is that we take for granted many of the things that, if you didn't have SMA, like walking, being able to do things, and especially when you're coming into adulthood, right? So Many who are viewing this discussion today are with SMA and perhaps are also anxious about getting prepared for adult world. And, you know, what are your insights or experience can you share with us, especially for those who don't have SMA, to be able to appreciate some of those obstacles, challenges that need to be overcome? And how do we come about to help them and their caregivers in preparing to make that transition into adult? Go ahead, Sharuz.
I feel like when it comes to answering this question, there's always three things that you should focus on. The parents, the environment, and the person. The first thing I'd like to bring about is the topic of parents. I feel like a lot of SMA parents and disabled parents, parents of disabled people, tend to coddle us too much. There is a interesting thing that happens when you coddle a child too much. We stop thinking that we can do a lot of things. It's I think psychologically it's called learned helplessness. I'm not saying don't help your kids. I'm also saying, you know, let them make mistakes. When it comes to personal stuff, when it comes to the person, it's more a sense of after making those mistakes, you kind of learn, okay, maybe I shouldn't do certain things. Maybe I can do certain things, because I grew up with a lot of people telling me what I can and cannot do. I guess in a way, my personality is the kind that if you tell me I can't do something, I'll go do it. And there have been many instances where, to my mother's chagrin, I have gone off and done the thing that she told me not to do. One of the examples is to go diving. I remember she told me, don't go diving, you will die. And then I thought, no, I won't. So I got a job and I paid for it. But the thing is, after I've paid for all of it, it sort of defeated the purpose of her going, you can't go. So she let me go anyway. What else? When it comes to the community, it's also this sense of belonging and a sense of not isolating yourself just because you're different from everyone else. It's knowing when to put yourself forward and when to, you know, hold back a bit. And it's something that doesn't happen if you don't have that kid or that person exist outside their sphere of parental or familial influence. Yes, siblings and parents are nice, but you learn more from your friends. You learn more from the community you interact with. You learn more from school. You learn more from college, and other activities. Is there anything that you want me to add? University stuff? Oh, life stuff. When it comes to life stuff, I feel like growing up with SMA, you come across certain barriers that are implemented on you by society. But at the same time, you're ensconced in this bubble of love and care and all the fluff, like you're being covered by a duvet all the time. So when you're a child, that's okay. But when you're an adult, when you turn 18, society expects you to become independent. Society expects you to graduate, get a job, get a spouse. But when you're disabled, that's a very difficult thing to do. I think when I graduated, I was so excited to come out into the working world. But what I've discovered was, and this still hurts me a lot, is that although I was accepted to many of the companies, I had to reject them because there is a point in your life when you go, I'm going to be working for this company, most likely 8 to 12 hours. We're talking the architectural industry here. They are not kind. And I'm not going to hold my bladder for that long. So these are one of the situations where you got to think of, is it worth it? Like these medical bills, the company is not going to support if they can't even put disabled access in toilets, etc., etc. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Sharuz, because those are some of the issues that we take for granted. And it's important for us to realize that these are lived realities and they need to be able to hear this. I really wanted us to start this conversation with your words and your voice. And I'm going next to Kaksha. You know, we're told, Kaksha, that the landscape for SMA today has changed for the better. And you heard the video just now, kan? Kalau dulu there was not enough information, now there's better, that now there's more interest in SMA, there more engagement and willingness to help and support from both the public and private health sectors. So do you agree with that, Kaksha, in that assessment? And what are the gaps or concerns that you feel need to be addressed and needs to be taken action on? Go ahead, Kaksha.
Thank you, Azrul. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. I think speaking through my experience, I would say yes, no, compared to my time. You know, it took us for more than 2 years to find out what is wrong with Aina. Okay, Aina was diagnosed when she was 2.5 years old through biopsy. And when the doctors break the news to us, I have no idea what is SME. I don't understand what is SME. And we were informed that there is no cure and no treatment. And that time, there's no Mr. Google. So the only information that I can get is only through the doctors and through the hospitals. And if we go for the hospital visit, we know the waiting hours is longer than the consultation, you know, with the doctors. And what we could do is when Aina and Adi were little, all we could do is just simply love our girls and keep them comfortable, even though we know that, you know, the war is going on inside their body. But we just remain hopeful and pray for a better tomorrow. But now today, I think looking at the number of SMA patients, especially the early diagnosed, keep increasing. More families can be reached out. And let me share you one story. You know, Aina's ex schoolmate, Daniel, he has a child, and the child is diagnosed with SME type 1. You know, when we heard the news, he called me and shared the sad news. And I refer this to We Care Journey. We shared this information, you know, and then the child was referred to HKL, and finally the child got treated. So what I'm trying to say here is that the process is very fast compared to our time. You know, last time I now get a diagnosis from the biopsy, now they can do the blood test. And if you can detect earlier, that means you can go for early intervention programs, which is very important for SME patients. But still back to your questions, I think that, you know, there is still things to be improved. I think more awareness and especially for, you know, the hospital, the medical doctors, and maybe doctors can show more compassion, you know, to the patients and families, and we really appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Kaksha. And certainly, you know, your statement it irradiates hope, you know, and also the kind of progress that you've seen, and it has changed quite a lot compared to before. True. And this is a reality today. Kalau dulu, it's very hard to get the kind of information. Macam you just cakap just now lah. Kalau dulu you don't have Dr. Google or Ms. Google or Mr. Google, kan? So now you have a lot of information that's available, but also through the different organizations and community support groups, kan? So today it's a very different scenario, and hopefully for the better. I want to go to Dr. Hu, and this is where you know, a lot of discussion has come about concerning the need for treatment and care, and we've heard quite a bit today about the role of parents, family, siblings even, in making sure that people who live with SMA get the kind of care and support that they need. And it does make a difference. It does help save lives. And you can see from the videos that we've seen this morning that people actually go forward. So, Dr. Hu, the thing is that there's been a lot of discussion about the level of care that's available for children with SMA in this country. And I would like to ask is, how do you think it is right now? And how can we do better moving forward? We've heard some of it just now from Dr. Chung's presentation, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. Go ahead, Dr. Hu.
Thank you, Asrul, and Dr. Chung and the team for having conducted the study and presented the report. I personally very touched. So going back to your questions, so in the past 18 years working as a pediatric neurologist, I must say that medical care for SMA have changed quite a bit, particularly in the last few years. In the past, we were more in a reactive and conservative mode. For example, in the past, children with SMA type 1, once the diagnosis is made, because there's no treatment at that time, and they were often being sent home because we know that they pass away very soon after that. For type 2 SMA, we were focusing a lot of our effort in preventing them from getting chest infection with aggressive treatment, so that they won't get to have the need to be ventilated in ICU. And for patients with SMA type 3, we do have a few, but over the years, we noticed that they disappear from a clinic, partly because at that time, there's again, not much active treatment that we're offering them. So, however, things have changed for the better in the past 5 to 10, I say probably 5 to 10 years, because we start to recognize even we may not be able to give them specific treatment, but there's still a lot of things we can offer to them, particularly in the area of palliative care support to the child as well as to the family. And there has also some improvement in respiratory care by taking a more proactive and in clearing the secretion with a cough assist machine, with offering them non-invasive ventilatory support. And we have also started to provide them vaccination against pneumococcal as well as influenza routinely. So, and as for other complications like scoliosis, we are being more active in terms of scoliosis screening. And over the years, I've seen more and more children with SMA have undergone scoliosis surgery. More excitingly, when we started to have access to few of the disease-modifying drugs for the past few since middle of last year for a few of our infants with SMA type 1. And so when we start to provide this disease-modifying drug, it's mandatory that we make sure we optimize the standard of care. They need regular monitoring by assessing their motor milestone with a standardized tools. They need to optimize their nutrition and growth. And some we actually went on to provide this by putting a percutaneous gastrostomy. However, I think we still have a long way to go because at the moment, none of these disease-modifying drug is registered in Malaysia. And few of the children who have received this life-changing treatment, they were either under compassionate use program or having participated in clinical trials. So that's my brief comment on your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hu. And certainly this is something that we want to be able to discuss further. And it's not just about disease-modifying treatments, but also the other aspects of therapies for SMA. Well, yeah, we've seen the impact of physiotherapy when it's done effectively with kids with SMA. So thank you very much, Dr. Hu. We go now to Dr. Fahisham over there in the East Coast. How's it going, Doctor? Let me ask you, what are your, I think, 3 key learnings or insights that you've had from being part of the research team of the study launched today? You know, what would you say to the healthcare professionals and policymakers when it comes to making some of those recommendations that we heard this morning a reality? Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay. I think there are 3. I mean, like, if you ask me about 3, I mean, like, there are many findings from the study that we've done recently, as presented by Dr. Chung. However, I'm just going to emphasize on maybe 3 things which are important here. Number 1, I mean, like, we knew, I mean, like, from the qualitative study that was done, there were many parents who are suffering from stress. I mean, like, it's about 50+% between the patient, the patient and also the parents. And also in terms of anxiety, I mean, like, there were you know, staggering number of 76% of the parents you know, having anxiety related to the experience that they have. And also we also identify a significant about 38%. I mean, that's, I mean, like, as described by Dr. Chung earlier on, I mean, related to a lot of things, maybe related to daily living things, for example, like mobility, transferring, personal hygiene, etc. But there are also small amount of the numbers who are also suffering from loneliness as well. So I think, I mean, indirectly, we should be aware that, I mean, like, a lot of patients and also parents who are looking after children with disability, especially SMA, have got, you know, they need support. They need support in terms of, from these findings, they need support in terms of, you know, managing the stress for whatever reason. I mean, like, because individually, I mean, all parents and patients, they are all different. But as we are aware as well, they have, you know, anxiety, they have stress, and also they have a significant number of depression, especially among the patient. The second part of it is that we also knew that in terms of experience, like Dr. Chen mentioned, that the healthcare provider unfortunately not doing that good, because in terms of diagnosis, they unfortunately the family have to undergo a long road in order to find the diagnosis. I mean, perhaps nowadays it has changed, but again, I mean, like, it is important, I mean, like, to acknowledge that unfortunately we need a lot more work to do in order to make awareness among the healthcare professionals, and also with the public as well, because, I mean, like, there's a lot of stigma related to this condition. The third part of it, I think the most important is about the challenges, you know, because, I mean, once you know the diagnosis, the problem is that, I mean, afterwards, what's going to happen? What the parents need to do next with their children. So in terms of you know, getting the diagnosis early, in terms of navigating through the services, because it is a very, very complex healthcare service around us. You know, how do they gonna get help at home? How do they gonna get community support? And also, you know, when do they need to come to the hospital? So these are all very new to the parents who've never had any patient or any children with SMA. And I reckon, I mean, like this need to be addressed again, because by understanding the challenges, understanding these experiences as well, that make us, you know, need to be able to tackle the problem related not only for the patient and also for the families as well.
Thank you, Dr. Faishal. And I think that is a very important series of points that you highlighted, especially on the burden on families. You know, I mean, very often it's like a whole mountain came down on them, you know, from not being necessarily health literate. You're suddenly expected to have the kind of knowledge that's able to provide adequate medical support or help, you know, for your kid who now has SMA, been diagnosed, but then you're expected to know almost everything. You know, you're going to the internet, doing research, and this is where support plays a big role in providing that. And we really need to be able to ensure that they get the kind of support that's needed. And this is a very good segue, I think, into the next point that I want to raise with Dr. Tan, actually. And that is because this is, I think, one of the areas that you would want to be looking at, and especially you do deal with bioethics, especially is, you know, sometimes people with SMA and their caregivers are sometimes forced to depend on others to highlight their issues and raise concerns, right? And we heard in the report just now, one of the findings was that sometimes healthcare professionals, doctors are themselves not very helpful and may treat patients as sort of passive beneficiaries of medical treatment. So I would like to ask you, because you have so much experience in this, is how do we help create the kind of safe spaces for meaningful participation and consultation of views from parents, caregivers, and even, you know, siblings who are wanting to help a family member with SMA? Because we've heard and we've seen from the videos is that it does help improve treatment, response to treatment. Go ahead, Dr. Tan.
Okay, thanks, Azru. I'm actually very honored to be here among all the champions, you know. So I would just like to give a bit more context from where I'm going to be speaking from. So I have been a general pediatrician for many years. So I think there are a few of us which are very generalists in at heart. And we have had quite a bit of experiences working with families, because I think at a point when I was in the district for 7-8 years, I think I remembered every SMA child that came to me, their families, and I think the thing that I've learned as you know, even you know, from the inner strengths, you know, that these children have, you know, they're so bright, and you know, they teach me so many things, you know, even from the parents, and how they actually kind of view life in a very positive way, even though they are from suburban poor or rural poor. And I think that is when I think we could see as healthcare professionals the constraint that we have in trying to help these children and families. And I think when you are talking about healthcare professionals, you know, in terms of how they are able to help, or, you know, to create safe space, or, you know, the attitude that they should have, you know, when receiving children with disability and their families, I think we need to look into the different groups and the backgrounds, you know, as who they represent, you know, are they part of the society? So meaning whether the mindset they have is part of who they are rather than being a professional. So I think to actually embrace diversity in the community is actually still much lacking among all Malaysians. I think the one thing we would like to see is to say that, you know, disabled population and community has so much to offer in terms of, you know, making, you know, looking at the other aspect of life itself, you know, that itself, it will kind of make us more human. And I think they contribute a lot in terms of better ideas as well, you know. So I think I think, to solve problems as a society. So I think that part, as a part of the members of society, I think we are still not there yet. We kind of still exclude them as another group rather than keeping them in the same space, so that includes, I think, in the education as well. So I think we have, I remembered how we actually try and fought with the schools and, to get 2 SMA child into the Perdana stream and normal stream. And, and we know the impact of them being with other children, the impact of their presence onto the normal children, the ones without disability would be so significant, because that is where, I think as a committee, we would probably know that it is best to be diverse rather than, to segregate, according to status, class or ability or disability. So I think that is one point. I think professionals is lacking, not because it's part of how they were trained, but again, how they have been brought up and educated, and the whole society and environment they have kind of grown up with. The other end is where healthcare professionals with, I think, the training itself and, there's still the lack of knowledge of how to manage and diagnose SMA children, like what, our dear colleagues have actually highlighted. I think the numbers is considered still small. And I think that the one thing about having more pediatricians in the country, that, or the government or the ministry looking at putting more budget into training more professionals and, training, having, putting a larger pie in terms of child care, healthcare in pediatrics is actually kind of still, so much space to actually, rooms to improve on that. So I think that is part, that is the part that I think we should look at struggling. I think struggling to actually kind of offer, options to parents after the diagnosis, where should you get an early intervention program if you are sitting in a place like Teluk Intan versus if you are sitting in Penang or in Kuala Lumpur. And I think that is the one thing that, the tools that we don't actually have to offer to parents. So I think it is a sad thing where parents need to kind of navigate through the systems and trying to find their own teachers. And, I think that is the one big question I'm going to put forth. The next one is whose responsibility is towards children, bright children like the SMAs, and would it be the parents' sole responsibility, or the state, the government, or the civil society as a whole now, like what we are sitting now. I think that is part of that conversation we are trying to aim for. The attention that what we owe to these children. So
okay, Dr. Tan, I think that's a great way to actually kupas that particular
that's
problematic.
So I have answered your question. Yeah.
The thing is, patient navigation is something that somehow we're expected to know how to go from point A to point B to point C, point A, and the burden goes back onto the caregivers, parents, families, and so forth. And I don't think we have enough appreciation of the struggle that many of them go through, and doctors especially are not very well responding to that. I want to ask some of the questions that have been coming fast and furious on the Q&A and also the chat. So let me go straight to it. Dr. Faisham, this question has been on since 11:30 earlier, and the question here is why do you think only 50% of the persons with SMA and their caregivers report feeling stress, and it's not a higher number, expecting maybe 90 to 100% given this really challenging disease? What do you think are the coping strategies for the other 50% who don't report that they're feeling stress, and or is it a bigger issue of, Malaysians basically conditioned lah, we don't complain lah, so we don't, and that's what the report is showing. So perhaps Dr. Fahisha?
Okay, I might add a little bit, but maybe Dr. Chen can answer more on this matter.
Okay.
I reckon, because I think we have a diversity in terms of cultural background of our participants in the study. So which means that I'm not concluding that some of us may report it as stress, or some of us may not report it as stress. But then, like I think, depending on the I think individual family members, how they are facing the situation, maybe at the early phase of the condition versus at the middle of the condition versus at the depending on the trajectory of the condition itself. So basically, I would assume, I mean, like different phase of the disease, they might respond differently, and also depending on the crisis that they are facing. Because I mean, like if there's no crisis, then I would assume, at that point of time, they might not reporting anything. But if the children are suffering from many medical problems, and therefore those are the things that they might be reporting. Okay. The other thing perhaps related to I would say, I mean, like maybe racial as well, because I mean, like because of the participants, they might come from the rural background, and then some of the families, they are more acceptance rather than having different emotional response to it. So I think that also would differ in terms of the response as well. But other than that, I wouldn't be able to answer. Maybe Dr. Chung can add some information for that.
Dr. Chung, are you there? Can switch on your video and join us for answering this question? But I can relate to what you said, Dr. Faisham, that perhaps, some people consider it almost like, takdir and serah kepada Allah and all that, right? So there's a lot of that, and the unwillingness to express that could be seen, if misread as being too complaining, and we don't do that very well, I think.
Yeah.
But Dr. Chung, are you there? Yes, Doctor.
Yeah.
Would you care to answer, perhaps?
Yeah. So I do agree with Fahisham's points because of our social cultural background, and a lot of them, have quite great faith in their own faith, and also because we also actually did a DAS 21 score, which didn't actually bring up all this, mental health well-being, because we only caught all these things in our qualitative study, which was, more revealing than just the quantitative, which is probably like Fahisham was trying to make a point that is at a point of time, and perhaps some of them who have actually over the years, have able to cope, and it has not been so stressful for them.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chung. Next question, would like to ask Shahruz, and that is, we've had a question responding to some of the issues that you raised in your presentation just now, and that is, how does a parent know when it's the right time to let their child move forward independently or protect their child? I mean, when do you know as a parent? What can you advise?
Well,
go ahead,
when it comes to knowing when to let go, my first question is, are they rebelling yet? But more importantly, it really depends. What are you protecting your child from? Who or what is the aggressor? What is the relationship you have with your kid? These are all very important questions to ask yourself. How well do you know your child, or have you been living in this made-up fantasy world that your kid is perfect and an embodiment of yourself and an extension of yourself? Children are not an extension of your hopes and dreams. They have their own lived experiences. You have to understand that. I think if they're under 10, actually, if we're talking about legally, their dolly incapex thing, like if they're under 16, they legally cannot make decisions for themselves, right? Makes sense. But we all know that in school, growing up, by the age of 12, there's some weird stuff that happens to a person's body and mind that we start to like things that are very contrary to our parents. It depends on social aspects. It depends on what we are sort of what we see, especially on media. So really, how well do you know your kid?
But Sharuz, let me ask you, I'm sure you've heard more times people saying you cannot. And you seem to be the sort of person who will say, no, I'll do it. You know, you see, the more you tell me I cannot do it, I will be going ahead and trying to do it. How do you balance that? I mean, people want to be able to protect and to be able to know that you're able to take on these challenges yourself. But at the same time, you know, there is this, you know, overprotection. You know, like you're starting your own business now, right? Is it going to be something that you are allowed to fail? And people are going to say, oh, there, you see, you can't do it. But you're going ahead and doing it anyway. I mean, how do you respond to people who say no to you more than yes?
For some reason, we come from a society that is deeply ingraining into our children and into our people in general that it's not okay to fail. It is okay to fail. That's how you learn. How do you know fire is hot? Well, somebody's touched it before. And if you want to touch it, go ahead. I don't subscribe to the idea that you're not allowed to fail. This idea that you start a business and suddenly everything is peachy and keen and clean and perfect. No, most people start a business and they fail over and over again until they realize that, you know, there's certain things that they do that cause them to fail. So they stop doing it. Children are not great with negative reinforcement, which is why we give them treats, which is why we give them candy, etc., and so forth. But adults, we're very good at learning from negative reinforcement. And that's what we do. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. But I'm also going to add that I am a person of privilege. I am born in a position of privilege. I have resources that are given to me by my parents, by my heritage, by the virtue of me being able to speak English. These are all privileges that I recognize. They are all privileges that I know some people don't have. So when I say start a business, go ahead, those come with extreme caveats. And they are not something that I or anybody can teach other people.
Thank you, Sharuz. And I think one of the more important points that you're trying to raise here is really that there's no one size fits all template. Everybody's going to have to go through it. Everybody's going to have to learn. And most importantly, everybody has to hear and allow each other to succeed and fail. Kasha, you know, we've heard a lot today. And one of the things that we heard are also frustrations from caregivers, patients, tension, and even helplessness. And definitely some of the issues that we've heard this morning talk about, you know, the safe spaces that are necessary for persons like yourself to seek support. How do you cope? How do you ensure that this environment is able to be created? And most importantly, can you use things like music or songs, you know, in the environment? And I'm asking a question that's on the chat right now. You know, I mean, what kind of mechanisms can you use? And in this case, they're asking whether music helps. Go ahead, Kasha.
I think what we practice with myself and my with Aina, you know, 3 of us in the family, we stay happy. That is the key of everything, I think. Because once you are, you know, you feel, because, you know, we know that the journey is it's not easy. It's very tough, okay? But if we keep, you know, feeling stressed, you know, invite all the negative vibes, you know, you can't do anything, you know. You can be sad, you know, because sadness is part of life, but you have to move on, you know. Find something that, you know, you make yourself happy, do something that, you know, let's say for your child, like Sharu said, you know, your child is very well, so you do something that, you know, a bonding time, you know, feel that time with the happiness, you know, try something new, make it attractive, like enjoy your life, appreciate whatever you have. I think that is the one that we are practicing now lah. And let's say if you feel like you are feeling down, if you feel like you would like to share something, share with someone, please go ahead, get some assistant, find someone that you can trust, talk to them, and then just share your feeling, because the problem is that we are Malaysian, I think maybe for Malays, we are used to be very reserved, segan, but you have to stand up, and then
support
we
each
do
other,
this for
right?
we do this for our child, for our family, and of course for ourselves.
Okay. Thank you, Kasha. I mean, that definitely is very supportive, and it's a positive way of looking at this and being able to cope in a practical manner. And I think this is something that a lot of us can take. Dr. Hu, we have a few questions for you, so I'm going to combine a few of the questions. We have one here. As a parent who is often having to see so many doctors, there are doctors who are active and wanting to do more, and then there are a lot of doctors who are pushing me away. How can I make this better? I mean, what can I do differently that can make them basically be more responsive? That's one question. The second question is the Institute of Pediatrics, do they have a plan to help to increase the awareness on rare diseases, to help reduce the possible wrong or misdiagnosis or late diagnosis of not only SMA, but all other rare diseases by pediatricians? So there's two questions for you, the first one and the second one. Go ahead, Dr. Hu.
First questions, I think we need to be aware that no two individuals are the same. So that goes for doctors and other professionals as well. So, some of them may have to do with their knowledge, their training, and their comfort in dealing with certain diseases. So if parents find that the doctors that they are meeting is not very helpful, they have the option to seek a second opinion, or to find out from friends or persatuan what other doctors they can see. Yeah. So so move on. I think if you find that the doctor that has been treating your child has not been very helpful, you have the option to seek other expert. Second question is with regards to improving awareness among healthcare professionals on rare diseases. I think it's ongoing. There are so many rare diseases, and in a lifetime of a healthcare professional, we are not expected to know all. But the important one, I think most of the trained doctor, they should be able to recognize. For example, spinal muscular atrophy is actually not the commonest muscle disease, neuromuscular disorder. Yeah. So maybe in the past, because there has not been much of advancement in terms of treatment, so maybe there wasn't much emphasis on the need to recognize them early, get them to places where they can be counseled, treated early. So, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, things perhaps will have changed. Certainly in my hospital and Klang Valley, we get a referral quite early, quite fast, and we do make a point to see them early because we know the challenges parents are facing. hopefully this will also change. This change will be across the board, even in other states and even in district hospitals. Yeah. So I
Dr.
think that's
Koo,
all. Yeah.
Can I ask you then? You mentioned about how pediatricians having a role in making sure that the referrals, but also the diagnosis is done in a timely manner. Can I ask you, are there any local guidelines being written or have been written on SME standards of care for the Malaysian healthcare scene?
We have not actually come out with a so-called Malaysian standard of care, but there is what they call an effort by the Ministry of Health to set up a so-called a committee to look into the standard of care and support for rare disease condition that includes SMA.
Okay.
But as you know, this effort has been only started past 2 years, and with the COVID, everything got
disrupted.
Disrupted.
Yeah.
So we hope things will have changed maybe in a few years to come. Yeah.
Okay,
I think Dr. Chung raised her hand.
Yeah, I see Dr. Chung there. Please go ahead, Dr. Chung.
Yeah, hi. I just like to jump in here. I mean, thank you for the participant who asked regarding rare disease and the awareness of it. Yeah, SMA is a rare disease, and it's across all rare diseases that we know they face common challenges like delay in diagnosis. So, you know, most rare diseases are genetic in origin, 80% of them, and it's very important for everybody to know that there are centers in Malaysia with expertise who can make diagnosis. So you need to get to the right people. Yeah. So there's a Ministry of Health hospitals in Kuala Lumpur and Penang, and there's university hospitals in UMMC, UKM as well. So that's very important. And like Dr. Koo mentioned about the National Rare Disease Policy, which is still in its baby steps, there's a lot more work to do. You know, we need a lot of stakeholders cooperation and input and to follow through, and hopefully, you know, that will be more meaningful for everybody in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. I would like to go next to Dr. Faisham here. This is a question, seeing how you are based in Kota Baru, Kelantan. What improvements or changes would you like to see in integration and linking care and support between patients and hospitals receiving or delivering SMA care?
Thank you, Azrul. I think we have to look back at the report and some of the hopes that were echoed in the report were I mean, they want to have the parents and also want to have access to treatment. And as Dr. Koo rightly mentioned, I mean, like access to modifying drugs, they are all on, unfortunately at this stage is on compassionate programs, which, you know, we have to kind of like liaise with the you know, certain drug company and then try to get some you know, the drugs to come over to Malaysia. And the other things is about government kind of like change in terms of service and community support, because whatever, I mean, I know what the government now is focusing on COVID and is focusing on prevention rather than, you know, community or chronic care for the time being, but still there are you know, a significant number of children with SMA and also a significant number with children with other disability, and that's where this need to be improved, and also related to the policymaker. So looking back at all these three hopes, Well, I can say, you know, I mean, because I'm a pediatrician in the rural part. I'm not saying that. I mean, in urban side, there's a disparity between whatever it is in the East Coast versus whatever it is in the West Coast. I mean, even in fact, Dr. Tan mentioned earlier on, even Teluk Intan and KL, I mean, perhaps even different as well. So disparity. I mean, like we acknowledge that, we know. But there's a lot of work need to be done in terms of I think increasing awareness among the healthcare professionals. Once they are aware of this, then there will be more interest in terms of maybe related to specialties, and also interest in terms of transition care, because I mean, like a lot of our SMA now, SMA type 2 and type 3, they are all surviving, you know, beyond. So therefore, in terms of transitioning from pediatric, you know, service to adult service needs to be making smooth. And unfortunately, in adult service, they don't see that much. So there need to be an interest in that side, on that side as well. The other thing is all about, you know, what are the challenges in the rural part. We know some of the things that might be challenging will be related to the equipment availability, because I mean, I think a lot of the time, I mean, if we want to do cough assist, for example, for SMA patient, unfortunately we've not got many respiratory pediatrician. B, well, maybe we're not trained to do so as well. So there will be some refine and tuning to assist us in order to help to make it more available. And other than that, will relate to the support and navigation of care. I think this is important, because I mean, I presume in the rural part, I mean, the service is there, definitely. Right? There are service. I mean, I'm working in palliative care. And I mean, like, obviously, I mean, before this, I mean, I asked similar to Dr. Koo, echo as well. Before this SMA type 1, we treat it conservatively, but now with the availability of the drugs, I mean, it's a game changer. So we kind of like assist and then try to help in terms of symptom management most of the time. So I think, you know, availability of the drugs, access to this drug, access to the equipment, access to the support. So there are many things that need to be done, so that we are much more, you know, getting more equal in terms of service. Not, you know, don't just disregard, you know, don't just put all the for all the money to the West Coast only. So East Coast as well, because there are a number of children here who suffer similar conditions as well.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal. I think that needs to be unashamedly declared. There needs to be more money for the East Coast as well for healthcare, and certainly there's a lot of over-concentration on the West Coast there of Semenanjung especially. I want to just go to Dr. Tan. You know, it's been spoken quite a bit about the role of doctors, and definitely it does make a difference in terms of how patients are able to navigate the pathway. So you work quite a bit in developing guidelines for doctors, and what can you say about wanting to make medical professionals do better or improve themselves in helping with that patient decision-making and providing treatment and care of individuals with rare diseases such as SMA? And also, I'm just going to combine this question that just came in, and is asking, you know, how much do medical students really learn about SMA or neuromuscular disorders? Can this be further improved on, especially in the curriculum, to ensure that there's better awareness so that doctors can know better of their patients that they're treating? Go ahead, Dr. Tan.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Azru. The part about like being a healthcare professional, I think, you know, let's talk about parents, you know, since we are on the pediatric topic today, and I think it goes back to the broader definition of best interest of a child, you know, and it's not just the medical needs, but, you know, the child as part of his family and part of the society, and his other interests, like in education, you know, forming connections with his siblings, you know, being loved by his siblings, his family, and, you know, whether he could make his own opinion, and to see life the way that he wants, how he defines it. So I think it is something that, that opens up my mind, being in bioethics and, having some direct training from John Lantos himself in the US. And this is what they were looking at, that, the definition of, how to look at the best interests of the patient. And I think as a healthcare professionals, we need to actually keep it there, to actually understand how parents are struggling and how they make decisions, and not to be judgmental. And, then when they don't come for follow-ups, when they can't meet up with all the requirements of care itself, why is that so, and to be appreciative of, all these struggles. And we don't put that pressure on them, in the sense that we try our best and understand what they're going through, but also be a strong voice at a more systemic level, like what, Dr. Koo, Dr. Chung is trying, and Dr. Faisham is here to actually kind of putting our extra time at the side to trying to see whether there's whether, we could actually work beyond the walls of our wards and clinics, to actually help this population. I think importantly, I think we are not just only trying to make sure that they are well, they are healthy, but they are able to flourish as well, and that part is something that I think in Malaysia, we are not there yet. And I think we are still struggling with even to maintain the adequate standard of care for children. And I think the focus and attention and, the budgets and, is definitely never adequate for our children in this country. And I think that is the part where doctors would want to actually go into social advocacy and, trying to make things better for our patients, So there's two levels, being understanding when you are seeing the families in front of you, and also on the other end of like how much you could actually do, because you are directly involved, with their care, and you could see firsthand, what's going on. And I think that is how we should be training our, our medical students, that's the word for it. There's a word for medical humility. What we can we know, or we don't know, and we can't offer. Okay. And and to understand that that parents, the way that they are making decisions, how are they making? Is there any power differences between both parties? And also to understand the social determinants to health, which is also related to pediatric care and child health. How. I think you will understand what is that.
Of course, yeah. No, it's an important point to make, really, among others, is that we need our policymakers to look beyond the walls of their institutions, of hospitals, clinics, and so forth, and be able to look back and consult the communities that are needing that kind of assistance and need the kind of changes that need to be made. And also the doctors, the community of doctors themselves need to be heard and also consulted and also changed when it comes to these issues. And it requires for our policymakers to engage on that. We're coming to the end of the session today, but I don't want us to leave without having Dr. Koo, sharing with us a little bit of his hopes concerning what he wants to see in advancement for healthcare on SMA, and what kind of changes do you want to see happen? And perhaps if you could just say maybe 3 things that you like to see changed. Go ahead, Dr. Koo.
Okay. Thank you, Azrul. I'd like to say more than 3 things.
Go ahead.
So I think I would like to see or optimize strategies that can maximize functional level and enhance quality of life of children and families with SMA through multidisciplinary approach. And I would like to see that this happen not only in my own hospital, but it should also empower those hospitals, especially those with pediatric neurologists or geneticists, to take up this challenge and become so-called treatment center for children with SMA. We have actually, we plan to start a national registry for children SMA so that we can have a clearer picture of the demographics, prevalence, the type, the functional level. And this is very important when clinical trials come along our way. And also when we start treating patients with SMA with disease-modifying drugs. And in fact, we have actually submitted a fairly detailed proposal to Ministry of Health on treatment of children SMA with disease-modifying drug in 2 months ago in June this year. Based on available clinical evidence on in terms of the efficacy, the safety, and of course the budget impact that will have on the government. And lastly, we have also asked the Ministry of Health to consider a newborn screening program for SMA in our proposal, because we know that the earlier we treat them, the better outcome the patient will be. So I think that's basically the gist of things that we try to do and hope that it will come to fruition in years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Hu. It looks like, you know, we need to actually organize another forum because we need a few more hours perhaps even with Dr. Hu. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. You know, we started off this discussion with a voice from someone living with SMA, and I thought it'd be good that we close with the voice of someone who is caring for those with SMA. And perhaps, you know, Kaksha, I would like to ask, you know, how is it in terms of your own feelings concerning how you've seen it change so much from when you were facing this issue with your daughters, and now over time you now see it's possible that people like yourself reach out and help others, especially the friend that you've helped. How do you feel in moving forward that we are seeing this grow so positively and so many people are now being able to be helped even through this webinar and launch here today? Go ahead.
Now it's become very emotional. It's the ending parts, you know.
Okay, Kaksha, go ahead.
Okay. I think to all the parents, you know, caregivers, patients, we know that the journey is very tough. Okay. Banyak halangan, you know, cabaran apa yang kita tempuh and bakal kita tempuh. But please remain hopeful and be strong. Okay. And it's okay to cry. I cry a lot. Okay. You know, you can ask Aina. Okay. And just do the best. Give the best, you know, do your best, and we pray that, you know, all the SMA patients, kids or adults patients, all types of SMA, type 1, 2, 3 will receive their treatment soon, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaksha. I cannot end it any better, really, with that, about wanting to see the ability to affect change, which will help others, and in such a way that we are able to see what is in a small number of people today will be the norm in the future, that more people with SMA are able to get the treatment and therapies that they need and the support and help for their caregivers, families, and the people who love them. You know, we've learned so much this morning, and I must say that we need to be able to look to each other, the strength to be able to build on what we've learned, what we've, the networks that we've helped create, in order for us to look at the low-hanging fruit that's available today and see where we can already affect the most change in the strength that we have today. I mean, we can take action now. We know who the stakeholders are. We know who our strengths, who our champions are when it comes to rare disease, and especially when it comes to SMA. We can do better. If it took previously several years in order to get to one point, we can perhaps do it better today. We need, I think, faster engagement with the stakeholders, and perhaps even say, and I take this inspiration from Shahru's at the very beginning of her speech, is that, you know, we need to look at obstacles to not be excuses for us to not move forward, and perhaps look at it as a way for us to take that and to see how we can affect those changes that we want to see. How do we make it reality? Who do we bring in to help us in our journey? So I just wanted to have a reminder again for all of us to take a look at smcare.org. There is on that website the My SMA Diary, which is in both English and Bahasa, which is intended to guide families and healthcare providers, and you can download it from that website. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our colleagues here today, Dr. Hu Teck Beng, Dr. Tan Hui Siu, Sharuz, Kak Shah, Dr. Fahisham, Dr. Chung early on, and Edmund, who have been so inspiring for this event today. And we are definitely looking at moving this conversation forward. I take inspiration from Dr. Tan, who just put here, you are the light and force. We can make things happen, we can change things, and definitely we need to move this conversation towards not just talk about it, but make things happen, actions and change to help save lives and change lives with SMA. So with that, I'm Azrul Khalid from the Galen Center for Health and Social Policy. Thank you all to the SMA community for coming out this morning to join us in this report launch of the Living with Spinal Muscular Atrophy in Malaysia document. With that, I wish you all Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day and weekend ahead. Thank you.